Well, good morning. It's wonderful to see everybody awake and alive after last night. Sounds like a lot of people had a lot of fun. I think I left about midnight and the party was still raging, as they say in Australia. So, a little caveat to start off with. I'm not going to be talking about programmatic advertising, about location services, or any of the wonderful new technologies and solutions that we as marketers have at our disposal. I'm an old guy. I'm actually going to talk about brands. Sort of the center of our universe, if you like, since before we even started doing our job, I presume. So I was at a little workshop about 3 months ago at Schwab, and we were talking about our brand and how important it is to us and how our tagline, Own Your Tomorrow, which we've had for the past 3 years, is really starting to catch on in the marketplace. All well and good. Everybody's nodding and going, yes, yes, yes. Then one brave soul raises his hand, it was a he, the back of the room, and goes, excuse me, but I get this, but which wall does the brand go on in my branch? At which time I nearly packed up my bags and left. But this actually comes to a really important point. A lot of the time, the people that we are working with, we're obviously all brand experts and masters of our trade and craft, but a lot of the time, the people we're working with don't really get what brand means and just how important it is to us as companies, as organizations, internally and externally. I love this quote from Michael Eisner because it really talks about how important it is to express your brand, not just as a purpose and as a proposition, but in every little thing you do, every tiny touch point, from how the phone is answered to what collateral looks like, to how we show up every single day in social media, and what it means when we actually don't show up and when we don't enter the conversation. That can be just as damaging as doing the wrong thing in many cases. So what we're going to talk about for the next 28 minutes or so is the role of brands, how brands show up, what they do to really engage people every day. Hopefully some of this will make you laugh, some may make you cry. Hopefully it'll definitely keep you awake first thing in the morning on a Monday. And even more importantly, hopefully you'll get a few hints and ideas about what you could be doing as a brand out there. Why is this so important? When you look through all of the studies about brands and marketing and advertising and values and how to be a great brand, and as we all know, there's a lot of conversation around about that. 4 things really come to light. The first is that your brand is effectively a micro-signal to consumers out there. Apparently, depends which study you listen to, but we are inundated with advertising messages, 5,000 to 7,000 a week. Some people say it's thousands per day. Within that, when you see that little swoosh, or you see the apple with a bite taken out of it, your mind instantly is flooded with some rational messaging, but even more importantly, emotional messaging. You feel something about that brand, and that's what great brands do. Secondly, we have a lot of people involved here with technology, the forefront of technology, leapfrogging each other as you go on. It's fantastic, but that's the point. Technology will always allow brands to leapfrog. What the brand does is allow you to create some defense against that. Pretty much everything we do is replicatable. I work at Charles Schwab. What do? We help people own their tomorrow through investing in all sorts of different ways. Recently, we launched something called Schwab Intelligent Portfolios, which is robo-advice. That's ones and zeros strung together to allow people to hopefully take advantage of the markets at very, very low fees. But because we can do that, lots of other firms can do that and are doing that. The only real differentiation for us, apart from a couple of details about the products and service, is the brand. Do people trust Schwab to do that, or do they not? And that's the third part. Brands are really like insurance policies for consumers. Through every interaction, we either build that trust up, we do nothing to it, or we knock it down. That's what a lot of today is going to be talking about. Brands are also very important for all of us here because we have stocks and shares and we have salaries to be paid, incredibly valuable. Does anybody have any idea how much the world's top 5 brands are valued at? Anybody shout out a number? That's a little high. We're going to go a little lower than that. That was pretty ambitious, but we like that. Good start for the day. Well, they're actually valued an enormous amount of money. This guy can tell you a bit about it.
$1 million.
Well, don't you think we should maybe ask for more than $1 million? $1 million isn't exactly a lot of money these days.
Okay, then. We hold the world ransom for $100 billion.
So no, it's not 3 trillion, that's what I think I heard from the back. It's actually $400 billion. That's not the products they make, it's not the factories, it's not the plants, it's not the value of the people in the organizations. It's just the value of the brands. That is an enormous amount of stockholder value from these 5 global companies, which is fantastic. And if you're one of the big 5, you can keep that momentum going. Hopefully you generate more and more profit and you do more and more innovative things. But if you're a smaller brand, and I know from talking to people last night and this morning, there's lots of smaller brands here as well. I was talking to one lady whose company is 50 people. That's not a huge brand. So how do they challenge the big guys? How do you actually enter that cultural conversation? How do you get people to think about you when you don't have hundreds of millions of dollars of advertising spend? When you can't do event after event across the country? You have to think and act like a challenger. That's the little guy up there. He's challenging the big sumo wrestler, me after a good breakfast. As many of you who will know, anybody who's heard me speak before, I'm a huge advocate of the challenger methodology because it allows brands to actually take a very different stance in the marketplace and to succeed through some very simple tactics. Take some of these brands. Audi, 10 years ago, was struggling. 5 or 6 or 7 in the luxury car market, depends how you look at, sort of cut the figures. They said very clearly, we are going to take a challenger stance, and we're going to challenge what we think is the weakest competitor out there in the top 3, Mercedes. What do Mercedes stand for? Beautiful, traditional, old luxury. In order to challenge that, Audi couldn't do more beautiful, more traditional, old luxury. They said, no, we'll stand for progressive luxury. Something quite different, but it'll tackle head-on what Mercedes stand for. And they took that through every single customer touch point. If anybody has seen their showrooms, they look totally different to any other car showroom out there. Their cars look different, they feel different, their advertising and marketing is different. Likewise, Virgin America, one of the toughest markets to enter into, not because you're just competing with the legacy carriers like United, and I fly United occasionally, and it's always a challenge, shall we say. Virgin America came along and they said, we have to look at every touch point as an opportunity to build our brand. One of the very first things they did, other than design their cabins to look like, as they say, a nightclub in the sky, was to have Victoria's Secret models on the plane. They couldn't afford any advertising. They did a fashion show as they flew to New York. Guess what happened? Everybody took selfies, they took pictures, they used their customers to actually show the rest of the world what the inside of the plane looked like. Likewise with Honeywell. I love this case story. Nest tackled probably the most boring thing in your home. I had never thought about my thermostat other than when it was too high or too low. They said, wow, there's some innovation we can create there. We can do something completely differently. They sold their company for $3.2 billion. That's not bad in a few years. Taking a boring category, thinking about it differently. This is what challengers do. We'll talk about beliefs in a second, but they slay monsters. It's a weird term, I know, for a lot of people, but a monster is basically something that they see out there in the industry, in life, in the market, and they say that's wrong, and we can do better. And they create an offer to directly tackle that monster. We often use, or I often use, because I'm quite clearly not from this country, St. George and the dragon as an analogy. The dragon is the monster. St. George, to tackle, to slay that monster, didn't bring a pocket knife. He didn't just bring a shield. He brought a bloody great sword. That was his offer, if you like, to the monster to slay the dragon. What they also do, this is really important, is they strategically, that's the key word here, strategically break conventions of the category. Because they're outsiders, they can take a big step back, look at a category and go, it's always been done like that. Maybe we can do it like this. And if we do it like this, break all the conventions of the norms of the category, what a thermostat looks like, how it functions, what the inside of an aeroplane looks like, what a car showroom looks like, we can create value. And then they sacrifice ruthlessly. We all have laundry lists of things to do every single day. Challenge is pare them down to the top things. When Steve Jobs came back to Apple, very famously, there were about 127 new projects on the docket. He looked at them, and this must have been heartbreaking if you were one of the 124 that he cut. But he said, there's 3 things here that will save this company and make our future. And we're going to focus on those. They became things like iTunes, the iPhone, and the iPod. That's what challengers do. They sacrifice the nice-to-haves and focus on what has to be done. I said we'd talk about beliefs. When we think about belief-driven brands, there's a lot of brands that automatically come to mind. We know what these brands stand for. From their outset, they've said, we've got a big cause. We're going to wear this on our sleeve. We're going to project it insistently and consistently, which is what challengers do, which is fantastic. But then there's another whole category of brands that maybe they didn't start off like that, or maybe they did, and they'd forgotten, or they'd forgotten to tell people this. Or maybe they're rediscovering their challenger heritage. And these, in my mind, are even more interesting, because most of our brands that we work with, quite honestly, we didn't start trying to save the world at the very outset. But maybe as we've matured, we found things we really can challenge. So these are the 5 brands we're going to talk about quickly over the next 20 minutes or so. And I suspect that most of you here are trying to enter what we call the cultural conversation, to get Americans to think about your brand, to talk about it, to share it, to tweet about it, and so on. Yeah, it's not easy. But it can be done, even for some of the most mundane of categories. So think about if your brand really stands for food. It stands for Italian food. It stands for the mealtime of families getting together. If you can't read this quote, it says, the dinner table always served as a reminder that we're connected to each other and life itself. That's wonderfully Italian, isn't it? You can imagine this big family sitting down and talking and eating and drinking, and the level of the conversation, because they're Italian, goes up and up and up and up until all the glassware breaks. However, this is now, that was then. You always believe that you stand for family, you stand for food, you stand for family food. Even more importantly, you come from the home of family food, Italy. But what do you see happening out there in your market, in this case, Australia, the land down under? You see something which you really believe is the threat to Western civilization, to life as we know it, that is breaking up family foods, that is creating a complete dissonance. Yes, it's technology. It's these cell phones, it's iPads, it's Xboxes, it's TV, everything that distracts families from doing what you want them to do and what you believe in. So what a lot of challengers do is they take this really simple formula. There's a book out just recently launched about this called A Beautiful Constraint. And it says challengers take a big, lofty ambition, in this case to own the family in family mealtimes. And then they look at what's stopping them doing that, the constraint, the barrier, the impediment. In this case, technology. And they say, oh my God, what are we going to do about this? They could just go, well, there's not much we can do about it. Life is moving on, technology has taken over, and we're just going to have to deal with that. Or, because they're a challenger, they move from, well, we can't because, to, actually we can if. And then they project that thought in this way.
Hey guys, time for dinner.
thought that might resonate with a few people here. But what's really interesting when you think about this, this is, and I'm going to say this wrong, I apologize, this is a pasta sauce. This is just really tomatoes and stuff that you stick on top of pasta. But they had a belief about what's happening to mealtime, and they projected that really strongly out there in the marketplace. What started off as just a little YouTube campaign, you can imagine their ambition, get a few million views, get a few people to talk about it, got picked up because it resonated so closely with not just mothers, but fathers. We have the same issue occasionally. They had 90 million people spending time to watch a 2-minute, effectively commercial for Dolmio. That's when you've entered the cultural conversation. That's when you put your product front and center for a really powerful cultural conversation. Let's switch gears, though. Pasta and food is fantastic, but there are other areas, too, where you can be a challenger, where you can really lead with your beliefs. So pharmacies forever and a day have been places, you go to buy Christmas lights, gift wrapping, medicine, snack bars. Always a total nightmare, personally, I believe. But you can also buy in pharmacies, very logically, cigarettes. Think about that for a second. So one company did think about that. They actually relaunched a whole brand. They moved from CVS to CVS/pharmacy. Doesn't sound like a big deal. But at the center of this was their decision to stop selling tobacco products of any type. Not just that, they said, if you want to quit, come into the pharmacy, we'll set you up with discounted nicotine patches. We've got seminars and workshops to help you quit the habit. And we will stop, in 2014, selling all tobacco products. Now, the analysts had a field day, as you can imagine. This makes no sense. CVS shares are going to go down like this. Profit's going to disappear because, depends who you listen to again, tobacco products make 4 to 6% of pharmacy sales. That's pretty significant, given all the things that they sell. What actually happened through social media, through people going, wow, that's a brand putting their money where their mouth is, standing up for their core beliefs. Sales went up. Same-store sales increased 16%. It didn't go down 4 to 6%. Partly that's because people connected with this, partly because they increased their focus on their core line, prescriptions and drugs and healthcare for people like us. Fabulous quick lesson to me of what happens when you take a step back, the conventions of the category say you sell tobacco. You say, no, actually, that doesn't make any sense. Our category, we're about health, and we should think about things differently. This is what challengers do. They invite controversy, if you like. We often talk about challengers never doing the middle ground. They don't do beige or grey or okay. They invite people to go, I can't stand them, or I love them. They don't like the middle area because it doesn't serve any purpose. Having detractors is actually really positive because it means people are talking about you. And detractors often come around when they realize what you really stand for. This is a fabulous example of a company really picking up on a belief in a conversation which, quite frankly, a year and a half ago in America was a very different place to it is today. They picked up on the belief that they knew a significant proportion of the country was dead against. But they said, no, as a firm, we believe in this, we believe in equality, and we're going to put, again, our money, in this case our advertising, exactly where our mouth is. And quite frankly, we'll see what happens. I love this example because, again, what are Honey Made selling? Biscuits, crackers, stuff that's really nice to eat, but stuff that fundamentally is not life-changing or world-changing. Obviously, they've had probably the last laugh. America's moved towards where they are. What this really tells us is it's standing for something, taking wholesome, which is the very center, obviously, of their product and their rational message, and making it an emotional message, can connect with people in a way which you probably couldn't imagine. Really powerful thinking and powerful enactment, too. And imagine how difficult this would have been to sell initially, if you're in most corporations. That is a very brave move. I'm going to talk very quickly about Schwab now. Schwab is a brand that's been around for 43 years now. I've been working with them for the past 3. And as my CMO often says, Julian, stop being so impatient. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We're here for the long haul. We have 2 million satisfied customers. We have a lot of money which we are managing. You have to be patient. You have to remember that where we have been reflects where we go. And one of the things we've been doing at Schwab for the past 3 years is actually looking back in order to focus on our future. Schwab has always really been a challenger brand, which is a strange thing to say in the financial services industry. But you look at Chuck's earlier writing, you look at the most recent statements from our CEO, you look at a lot of the innovations, pretty much the first people to take investing online, the first person to tackle the monster, as he saw it, of Wall Street and open it up to Main Street, people like us. Chuck at the beginning said, investors deserve a better alternative to Wall Street. We want to stand up for Main Street versus Wall Street. He talked about the opportunity for people like us to move from wage earners into actual owners. That's a big difference. By investing in the stock market, by investing in the US economy. And over the last 3 years, we've taken this and we've centered this on one word, ownership. Not just ownership of stocks, in the way that Honey Made wasn't just wholesome about products, but ownership in life. We believe fundamentally, and this is obviously something fairly close to my heart, that when people really invest in their future, they sacrifice a little bit today in order to create a better tomorrow, really good things happen. That's what all of us are doing here at iMedia. We're investing some time, despite our to-do lists, learning and thinking and connecting, hopefully in order to make a better future for ourselves and our companies. And this concept of ownership spreads across the whole of life. It's not just investing, it's education, it's sport, it's fitness, it's community involvement, and so on. So this is our working definition, to taking accountability for your destiny by making hard decisions today and investing in your future in order to create a better tomorrow for yourself, your family, your community, potentially even the world. It's a big thought. So our challenge over the last 3 years in a society that thinks about investing as a necessary evil often at best and something even worse than that at worst, is to get this concept of ownership, of own your tomorrow, out there in the marketplace. And there's one thing that we know, is that when people really ask questions, when they get engaged in their finance, when they get engaged in life, really good things happen.
Hey, Dad, who is that man?
He's our broker. He helps look after all our money.
Do you pay him?
Of course.
How much?
I don't know exactly.
What if you're not happy? Does he have to pay you back?
Nope.
Why not?
It doesn't work that way.
Why not?
Are you asking enough questions about the way your wealth is managed? Wealth management at Charles Schwab.
This is what challengers do. They take a somewhat naive approach, typified there by the kid, and they ask questions about the category, and they ask people to ask questions. And they say, challenge what you know. Get involved. So we're taking this all the way through to something we're calling an ownership index, looking at the narratives currently happening in America around ownership, how they're expressed, in what domains, career, health, learning, etc., are they really active? And then where geographically in the States do communities dial up or dial down on particular types of ownership? So it's not just a TV commercial, it's not just collateral, it's really trying to enter the cultural conversation, define what ownership means, celebrate it where we see it, and obviously from an investing perspective, actually deliver that. Last case story I'm going to talk to you about is really focused on thought leadership. I love this one because it's now quite famous. It's been going about a dozen years, but it speaks to the power, again, of looking at things differently and taking a big step back. So, let's say you're a brand manager. I'm sure we have some brand managers here. And you've been given the task of managing the decline of a pretty major brand. And you believe, if you stick this out for 2 years, you manage it by, let's say, minus 1% a year, minus 2%, you'll move on to another more exciting brand. Fairly valid. A lot of us would take that approach. Or you say, maybe, just maybe, there's something else we can do, despite the fact that our product is inherently snore-worthy. It's boring. Nobody thinks about us. Nobody cares about us. And we know that it doesn't really matter what we do rationally, people aren't going to care. So in that case, we have to create a big, scary, emotional monster, something that the target market can really connect with. And the monster in this case was the beauty myth. The fact that you go to any newsagent, any convenience store, and this is what you see, plastering the shelves of magazines. Beautifully photo-retouched models looking a certain way. And this is the way that women were supposed to feel. In the survey they did at the time, Dove discovered that less than 2% of women felt themselves to be beautiful. So 98% didn't. Partly because of this beauty myth. So this private conversation women were having with themselves, they put on the most public display possible, 48-sheet billboards. And they said, no, beauty can look any way you want it to. It can look like that. It can look like this. And then they worked with young women and institutions, and they said, remember, the vision that you are getting of beauty is completely manufactured.
Okay, folks, so very quiet, please. Camera's rolling. And we're recording sound. It's slated.
So that may or may not be your perception of beauty, but it's not real beauty, it's manufactured beauty. That wasn't a nice to have. That campaign, it's been going a dozen years now, with lots of different iterations, have taken Dove from a brand that was doing this to the world's #1 soap brand, and #3 in Unilever's portfolio of all their brands. So standing for something, standing for a belief and projecting that insistently and consistently is what challengers do, and it creates incredibly successful businesses. So at the beginning we said, somewhat jokingly, which wall does the brand go on? I contend actually that the real answer is that the wall is the brand and the brand is the wall. This is something from Chipotle. Anybody who's been in there and had those burritos, you know exactly what Chipotle stand for and what they stand against. Throughout the whole restaurant experience, from the napkins and the liners that you actually get your burrito in, through to the stuff on the wall, through to the outside. You know exactly what they're talking about. They've infused the brand through every single wall and touch point. And likewise, the brand is the wall, because it's the thing that protects us. It's the best type of defense is offense. That's what a brand does. It creates this wall around us. It enables us sometimes to do premium pricing, to enter new categories, to recover from disastrous idiocy. Think of New Coke. That was a disaster. If Coke's brand wasn't so strong, they probably wouldn't have survived. More recently, think of Netflix. They had a huge hiccup a few years ago. But people loved the brand, they survived, they apologized, and they moved forward. So the answer, I guess, to the question, which wall does the brand go on, is every wall, all the time. Your brand is the wall, and the wall is your brand. Thank you for listening.